A moment ago, Britain stopped in shock in a live broadcast that no one expected. Explosive revelations about Keir Starmer burst onto national television. Revelations so severe, so politically devastating, that insiders now say the Prime Minister is preparing to resign. The information leaked in real time, catching the government off guard and sending the entire country into a frenzy. And the question tearing through the nation is simple. What exactly was exposed on live TV that pushed Starmer to the brink of stepping down? Just 1 minute ago, the political world was shaken to its core when a live television broadcast revealed information that had been tightly guarded inside the highest levels of government. The revelation was sudden, unexpected, and powerful enough to send shockwaves through every newsroom in the country. As the details spilled onto the screen, the reaction was immediate. Gasps from journalists, panic inside Downing Street, and a flood of messages erupting across social media. Within seconds, whispers began circulating. Keir Starmer may be preparing to resign. Viewers across Britain watched in disbelief as the presenter revealed a set of confidential documents that had allegedly been passed to the network by an unnamed insider. These documents, according to the broadcaster, contain contradictions, hidden decisions, and internal communications that paint a picture far different from the calm, controlled image the government has tried to project. But the most shocking part was the claim that Starmer himself was aware of these issues long before they became public. The words direct involvement flashed on the screen, sending the entire political establishment into crisis mode. Inside Westminster, chaos erupted instantly. MPs rushed out of meetings, advisors grabbed phones, and party officials scrambled to understand what had just unfolded. Some insiders described the reaction as pure panic. Others say this is the moment everyone feared. The moment when hidden tensions inside the government burst into the open. For months, rumours had whispered through political circles about unusual activity behind closed doors, but nothing prepared the country for the scale of what was exposed live on national TV. Meanwhile, Downing Street reportedly went into immediate lockdown. Officials were seen moving quickly between rooms, securing files and holding emergency calls with legal teams. One source described the atmosphere inside as total shock, noting that even Starmer's closest allies appeared blindsided by the speed at which the information was released. The Prime Minister, according to early reports, was briefed moments after the broadcast began, and his reaction left staff stunned. For the first time since taking office, he looked genuinely shaken. Outside, the public reaction grew louder by the second. People watching from their homes, offices and phones flooded platforms with disbelief and anger. Questions erupted. How long was this hidden? Who leaked it? And what does this mean for the future of the government? Hashtags demanding Starmer's resignation began trending within minutes, while analysts across multiple channels described the developing situation as the most sudden political collapse in recent history. Political opponents seized the moment immediately. Senior figures across rival parties demanded a full explanation, accusing the government of misleading the public and hiding critical information. One MP declared on live TV that Starmer's position was now completely untenable, while another claimed the leak confirmed what many had suspected for months. The calls for accountability grew louder, sharper, and more urgent with each passing moment. But perhaps the most alarming detail came from a senior journalist who claimed the leak was just the beginning. According to them, additional documents are believed to exist, documents that could reveal even more damaging information. If true, this could mark the start of a political crisis far larger than anyone anticipated. The journalist warned that what the public witnessed on live TV may be only the surface of a much deeper problem. As the first hour of the scandal comes to a close, one thing is clear: the pressure surrounding the Prime Minister has reached a breaking point. Those closest to the situation say he is now considering a resignation speech, though no official confirmation has been given. Britain stands frozen, waiting for his next move. And with each second of silence from Downing Street, the sense of crisis grows stronger, darker, and more irreversible. As the broadcast continued replaying across every major news channel, the impact of the leaked revelations grew heavier and more dangerous. What first appeared to be a single shocking disclosure soon unfolded into a chain of deeper contradictions. exposing decisions and internal messages that raised far more questions than answers. Analysts struggled to keep up, scrambling through every frame of the televised leak, trying to understand how such sensitive information made it to air without warning. What they uncovered only added to the chaos. The documents referenced a timeline of events that directly collided with Starmer's previous public statements, creating a storm of anger and suspicion. Inside the government, tensions were rising at a speed no one could control. Advisors were split into opposing groups, one insisting on immediate damage control and another urging Starmer to prepare for the possibility that his leadership had become unsustainable. Reports suggest that the Prime Minister held a closed-door meeting with his closest advisers shortly after the broadcast, where voices were raised, disagreements erupted, and panic spread through the room like wildfire. Some believed the situation could still be contained. Others warned that the leak had crossed a point of no return. Meanwhile, Parliament was thrown into turmoil. MPs rushed into emergency discussions, demanding immediate clarification from Downing Street. Opposition members pounced on the opportunity, calling it the most serious breach of trust in years. Even members from Starmer's own party expressed concern, privately questioning whether the government could survive the unfolding disaster. Every corridor in Westminster buzzed with whispered speculation, fearful predictions and frantic attempts to understand who inside the government had access to the leaked material. The pressure intensified further when a second wave of information began circulating online. Screenshots, snippets of documents and unverified messages spread like wildfire across social media. Though not yet confirmed, the new material pointed to a widening pattern of internal disputes and concealed decisions. Commentators describe the unfolding drama as a political free fall, warning that if these files were proven genuine, Starmer's resignation might not just be likely, it could be unavoidable. Crowds began gathering outside government buildings, their numbers growing as the minutes passed. People held signs demanding accountability, chanting for answers and refusing to leave until someone inside Downing Street addressed the crisis. Police were forced to set up additional barriers as the crowd swelled. The anger was palpable, driven not only by the leak itself but by the sudden silence that followed it. Every second without a response from Starmer pushed the tension higher. Inside the Prime Minister's office, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Senior staff were reportedly arguing over whether to prepare a public speech or focus on challenging the authenticity of the leaked documents. Legal experts were brought in to examine the files aired on television, but early assessments suggested the material was too detailed to dismiss easily. One source described Starmer's expression as a man watching the ground disappear beneath him, noting that he remained unusually quiet throughout the briefing, listening carefully but saying very little. As the crisis deepened, political allies began distancing themselves. Several key figures cancelled scheduled interviews, refusing to comment or defend the Prime Minister. Others released carefully worded statements acknowledging the seriousness of the situation while stopping short of showing full support. This sudden shift sent a clear message. Starmer's circle was shrinking, and the people who once stood firmly beside him were now focused on protecting themselves. To make matters even more volatile, journalists hinted that the whistleblower behind the leak might not be acting alone. According to early theories, multiple insiders could be involved, each holding additional information that could be released at any moment. This possibility terrified government officials, who warned that the scandal might grow into something far larger than a simple leak, potentially exposing months of internal conflict and hidden disagreements within the administration. With the nation glued to the news, analysts began preparing for the possibility that Starmer might be forced to address the country within hours. Some predicted he would deny everything. Others suggested he might attempt to shift blame onto unnamed officials. But a growing number believed there was only one realistic outcome: resignation. The weight of the revelations, the explosive public backlash, and the silence from Downing Street had created an atmosphere that felt irreversible. As night approached, Britain found itself on edge, uncertain, divided and waiting. The revelations leaked on live television had cracked open a crisis with no clear ending. And while the Prime Minister remained hidden from the public eye, the pressure around him continued to close in, tightening with every passing moment. As the night deepened and the political storm grew even more severe, the situation took a dramatic turn. New voices began stepping forward, former advisors, party insiders and anonymous officials, each adding fuel to the already raging fire. Their statements didn't just echo the televised revelations, they expanded them. According to multiple sources, the documents shown live were only part of a much larger pile of internal files that had been quietly circulating among senior officials for weeks. Some insiders claimed they had warned the government to prepare for a possible leak, but their concerns were ignored. The idea that this crisis could have been prevented has only inflamed public anger further. Across Westminster, the atmosphere became unbearably tense. MPs gathered in late-night meetings, their discussions heated and unpredictable. For the first time since the scandal began, members of Starmer's own party openly questioned whether the Prime Minister could survive until morning. The whispers grew louder. If he refuses to resign voluntarily, a leadership challenge may begin immediately. Senior party figures reportedly held private calls, trying to measure the damage and decide whether to distance themselves completely or attempt one last effort to defend him. The uncertainty created panic, and the fear of political collapse spread rapidly. Outside, the scenes were even more intense. Protesters continued gathering in larger numbers, surrounding key government buildings and shouting demands for transparency. News crews captured the growing unrest, showing a public refusing to be silent. Many held their phones high, displaying screenshots of the leaked documents as they chanted slogans demanding accountability. Police struggled to keep the crowds contained as tensions rose, with some officers reporting that they had never seen public frustration reach this level over a political scandal. What began as shock had now evolved into full-scale outrage. Inside Downing Street, the Prime Minister remained closed off from the public eye, but sources described the atmosphere as chaotic and close to breaking. Advisors moved in and out of his office, papers in hand, voices tense and hurried. Some demanded immediate clarification, arguing that the government must respond before the crisis spirals beyond control. Others told Starmer that any attempt to deny or minimise the leak would only make things worse. The weight of these conflicting opinions left the Prime Minister isolated, trapped between fear of resignation and fear of total political collapse. Adding to the turmoil, journalists uncovered hints of a second leak that could drop at any moment. Rumours spread that another set of files, possibly even more damaging than the first, was being verified by multiple media outlets. If these new documents proved to be authentic, analysts warned that the government's credibility could disintegrate completely. Broadcasters described the situation as a countdown with no clear ending, warning viewers that the crisis could intensify with a single push of a button. Political rivals, sensing the vulnerability of the government, sharpened their attacks. A senior opposition figure went live on television, declaring that the revelations proved Starmer's leadership was beyond repair. Another insisted that the Prime Minister had lost the moral authority to govern, urging Parliament to begin official procedures to remove him if he refused to step down voluntarily. These statements, repeated across multiple channels, amplified the sense of urgency gripping the country. For many, it was no longer a question of whether Starmer would resign, but when. Meanwhile, within Starmer's inner circle, a deep divide became impossible to ignore. Some advisors reportedly urged him to deliver a strong denial, insisting the documents were being misinterpreted. Others cautioned that denying too forcefully could backfire if additional leaks emerged. A few pushed him toward resignation, believing it was the only way to stop the political bleeding. Every strategy came with risk, and every option carried the potential to destroy his career entirely. As midnight approached, Downing Street issued a short, vague message stating that the Prime Minister was reviewing the situation. The statement offered no clarity, no explanation, and no comfort. Instead, it intensified speculation, suggesting to many that Starmer was indeed preparing for a major announcement. The message immediately went viral, sparking fresh debates across social media and sending journalists into a frenzy. The silence that followed was deafening. Across Britain, people stayed awake, glued to their screens, waiting for the next development. Time felt frozen, suspended between panic and anticipation. The televised revelations had not only shaken confidence in the government, they had opened the door to a crisis that now seemed unstoppable. And with every passing minute, the pressure on the Prime Minister tightened, threatening to force a decision that would change the political landscape of the nation. By the time the clock struck midnight, one thing had become undeniable. The country was bracing for Starmer's next move. Whether defiantly holding on or preparing to step down, he was now standing at the edge of a decision that could alter the future of British politics forever. The atmosphere around Westminster grows heavier by the minute, as if the entire political system is holding its breath, waiting for the final outcome. Rumours multiply faster than they can be dismissed. Advisors whisper behind closed doors, ministers exchange frantic messages, and senior officials abandon their usual calm as they scramble for answers. What began as a single leak on live television has now snowballed into a national turning point, one that even Starmer's strongest allies can no longer ignore. The pressure is no longer coming from the opposition or the media. It is coming from within his own walls, from the very people who built his rise to power, now watching it crumble beneath their feet. The party's internal crisis committee, formed in desperation, struggles to hold itself together. Every discussion circles back to one question: can Starmer survive this storm, or is the damage already irreversible? Some insist he must step down immediately to prevent a full-scale collapse of public trust. Others argue that a sudden resignation would trigger political chaos that the country is not prepared for. But beneath all the arguments, all the warnings and calculations, there is a silent truth everyone senses but no one wants to admit. The situation has moved beyond strategy. The narrative has escaped their control. The scandal has taken on a life of its own, feeding on confusion, doubt and fear. Outside, the country stands divided, watching every update with a mix of disbelief and anticipation. Social media pulses with theories, reactions and demands, each more urgent than the last. Videos of the leak have been replayed millions of times. Analysts attempt to dissect every frame, every phrase, while political experts admit they have never seen a situation escalate this fast. People who once trusted Starmer now question everything. Others call for patience, insisting on due process, but even they cannot deny the magnitude of what has unfolded. The idea of the Prime Minister potentially resigning live on air just hours after the revelations would have seemed impossible yesterday. Today, it feels almost inevitable. Inside Downing Street, Starmer remains silent, locked away from the world as he faces the reality he can no longer postpone. His team waits for a statement, any indication of his decision, but the only response is the closed door of his office. Some wonder whether he is preparing a final defence, a last attempt to regain control. Others suspect he is drafting the words that could become the most shocking resignation speech in recent British history. Time passes, but the weight of the moment only grows. Every second deepens the sense of uncertainty gripping the nation. Night begins to fall over London, turning the city into a glowing maze of lights and restless movement. The media gathers outside in numbers that would rival an election night. Broadcasters prepare their studios for what could be a historic announcement. Commentators rehearse lines for every possible scenario, knowing that whichever outcome unfolds, the political landscape will never look the same again. Tension hangs in the air like electricity before a storm. Every window, every television, every phone across the country waits for the same thing: a single appearance, a single sentence that will determine the fate of the government. Then at last the door inside Downing Street opens. Advisors rise to their feet. The corridors fall silent. Starmer steps into view, his expression unreadable, carrying a document that instantly sends shockwaves through the room. No one breathes. No one moves. This is the moment everything has been building toward, the moment that could mark the end of his leadership and the beginning of a new chapter in British politics. As he walks toward the cameras waiting outside, the nation braces itself for an announcement that will be remembered for decades. Whatever he says next will change everything. And as he reaches the podium, the world holds its breath, waiting for the final words that could bring his time in power crashing down.